The morning bell rang across the Galactic Academy, echoing through metal hallways and glass corridors that floated in the endless black of space. The station was huge, bigger than most cities on most planets. Over 50,000 students lived here, coming from 300 different worlds. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some were made of light itself. They all came here to learn how to live together in a galaxy that was often cruel and cold in the Eastern Wing. 12 young Velroth cubs walked toward room 47C. They moved together like a small army. Their wolf-like bodies covered in thick gray fur, their yellow eyes sharp and alert. The Velroth were known across the galaxy as fierce warriors. Their cubs were considered impossible to teach. They trusted no one outside their own kind. 3 teachers had already quit this class. 3 teachers had run away crying or shaking or both. But these cubs walked with purpose now. They walked with something that looked almost like excitement. Ren led the group. He was the biggest cub, almost reaching adult size even though he was still young. His fur was darker than the others, marked with silver streaks that showed his noble bloodline. Behind him walked Hana, the smallest of them all, her ears always moving, always listening. Then came Doan with his scarred muzzle, Suji with her clever eyes, Minho and Jian walking side by side, Taiwu cracking his knuckles, Jiwoo silent as always, and the 4 others whose names were just as important to their teacher. Their teacher. That was why they walked with purpose. That was why something like happiness lived in their young hearts. Her name was Yuna Park. She was human. Humans were strange creatures. They were soft. They were weak. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor. They could not survive in extreme cold or heat. They needed to breathe a very specific mix of gases. By all logic, they should have died out long ago on their little blue planet. But they had not died. They had spread across the stars. And everywhere they went, they did something the Velroth could not understand. They made friends. They built bridges between species that had hated each other for thousands of years. They walked into rooms full of predators and somehow walked out with all eyes. Yuna was like that. She had walked into room 47C 6 months ago, and she had not run away. Ren remembered that first day. He had growled at her. He had shown his fangs. He had told her in the most insulting way possible that humans were prey and prey should know their place. Yuna had simply sat down on the floor, made herself small, and started talking. She talked about Earth. She talked about wolves, creatures that looked almost like Velroth but lived on the human homeworld. She talked about how humans had once feared wolves, hunted them, nearly destroyed them. And then she talked about how humans had changed. How they had learned to see wolves as brothers. How some humans and wolves now lived together, worked together, protected each other. Something in her voice that day had made Ren stop growling. Something in her eyes had made him listen. Now, 6 months later, the cubs reached room 47C. The door slid open with a soft hiss. The room was dark. Ren stopped so suddenly that Hannah bumped into his back. His nose twitched. He breathed in deep, searching for the familiar scents. Yuna always came early. She always turned on the warm yellow lights that she said reminded her of sunshine on Earth. She always brewed a pot of tea that smelled like flowers and herbs. She always played soft music while she prepared the day's lessons. The room smelled like nothing. It smelled empty. It smelled wrong. "She's not here," Hana whispered. Her voice was small and scared. The cubs spread out into the classroom. Suji checked the teacher's desk. Minho looked in the small storage room at the back. Taiwu even checked under the tables, though he knew it was foolish. Jiwoo stood very still in the center of the room, his eyes closed, as if he could feel where Yuna had gone. "The lights have not been turned on today," Suji reported. "The heating system shows no adjustment. She has not been here at all." That is impossible, Do-hong growled. His fur stood up along his spine. She is never late. She is never absent. She told us that she would always be here for us. A chime sounded from the ceiling. The Academy's computer voice spoke in its calm, emotionless tone. Attention students of Room 47C. Instructor Una Park has been marked absent for today's session. The substitute holographic instructor will arrive in 10 minutes. Please remain seated and prepare for class. The cubs did not sit. They did not prepare. Ren felt something cold growing in his chest. In Velroth culture, when a pack leader disappeared without warning, it meant one of two things. Either the leader had been killed by enemies, or the leader had abandoned the pack. Both were disasters. Both were betrayals of the deepest kind, but this was different. This was Una. She had promised them. She had looked into their eyes and promised that she would never leave them. Humans, she had said, did not break promises to their pack. Something is wrong, Ren said. His voice was low and certain. She would not leave us. Not like this. Not without telling us. Then where is she? Jian asked. Her voice cracked with worry. I do not know, but we will find out. Ren turned to face his packmates. They were all looking at him, waiting for him to lead. This was what pack leaders did. This was what Una had taught him in her gentle way. A leader did not just give orders. A leader took responsibility. A leader protected the pack, even when the pack did not know it needed protecting. Suji, he said, you will find information. Use the Academy systems. Find out where she went and when. Suji nodded, her clever eyes already planning. Minho and Jian checked the medical bay. If she is hurt, she might be there. The two cubs bumped their heads together in agreement and ran out the door. Taiwu, find the maintenance workers. They see everything in this station. Ask them if they saw anything strange. Taiwu cracked his knuckles again and smiled a hunter's smile. The rest of you, spread out. Search the corridors. Search the common areas. Ask anyone who might know anything. Hannah stepped forward. What about you, Ren? Ren looked at the empty desk where Una should have been sitting. He looked at the dark screens that should have been showing lessons. He looked at the cold tea maker that should have been filling the room with warmth and comfort. I will go to the faculty quarters, he said. I will find out what the other teachers know. The cubs moved. They did not ask permission. They did not wait for the substitute hologram. They did not wait for him. They ran out of room 47C, like a pack of hunters chasing the most important prey of their lives. Other students in the hallway stopped and stared. A group of Selvari, their delicate insect bodies trembling, pressed themselves against the walls as the Velroth cubs rushed past. A Taraki, its body made of living stone, turned its massive head to watch. Even a pair of Vexari, known for their cold logic and complete lack of emotion, paused their conversation to observe. Velroth cubs, running through the academy searching desperately for something. No. Not something. Someone. A human. The galaxy had seen many strange things, but perhaps none stranger than this. Suji ran through the academy corridors until she found an empty computer room. Her claws clicked against the metal floor as she slid into a chair designed for species much larger than her. She did not care about comfort. She cared about finding her teacher. The academy computer system was supposed to be secure. It was supposed to keep students out of faculty records and private information. Suji had learned long ago that supposed to and actually were very different things. She had always been good with technology. Back on her homeworld, her parents had worried that she spent too much time with machines and not enough time learning to hunt. They said she would never be a proper Velroth. Una had never said that. On the third week of class, Una had found Suji hiding in the back of the room. trying to hack into a game system with a broken tablet she had found in the garbage. Instead of getting angry, Yuna had sat down next to her and asked what she was doing. When Suji explained, Yuna had smiled and said that every pack needed someone who could solve problems in unusual ways. That memory burned in Suji's mind as her claws danced across the keyboard. She was solving a problem now. The most important problem she had ever faced. The security system tried to stop her. She went around it. The firewall tried to block her. She went through it. Within minutes, she had access to the faculty tracking database. "Instructor Yuna Park," she muttered, typing in the name. "Where did you go?" The screen filled with data. Biometric readings, location logs, access records. Suji's eyes moved fast, scanning through the information. Her heart began to beat harder as she read. Yuna had been in her quarters until 0342 hours. Then she had left suddenly, moving fast through the corridors. Her path took her toward the Eastern Maintenance section, an area that was restricted for safety reasons. At 0347 hours, her biometric signature had entered a sealed corridor. After that, nothing. No more readings. No more location data. It was as if Yuna had simply disappeared. Suji felt cold fear running through her body. She grabbed her communicator and sent the information to Ren. Across the station, the other cubs were searching and remembering. Minho and Jaeon reached the medical bay, but Yuna was not there. As they questioned the nurses, Minho thought about the day Yuna had first earned his respect. It had been in the second week of class. A group of older students, prey species from a world called Tezari, had cornered Jaeon in a hallway. They called her monster. They called her beast. They said predators like her should not be allowed in the academy. Minho had arrived ready to fight, ready to prove that Vilrath cubs were not to be threatened. But Yuna had gotten there first. She had stepped between Jaeon and the Tezari students, her small human body blocking their path. She had not yelled. She had not threatened. She had simply talked to them, explaining that fear was natural, but cruelty was a choice. She had told them about Earth, about how humans had learned to live alongside predators instead of fighting them. By the end of her speech, the Tezari students had apologized to Jaeon. Minho had never seen anything like it. A human solving a conflict without violence. It should not have worked. But it did. Taiwu found a maintenance worker, a small furry creature from a species called the Molix, and began asking questions. The Molix was scared of him at first, as most small creatures were scared of Velrath. But Taiwu remembered what Yuna had taught him. In the 5th week of class, Taiwu had broken a desk in frustration. He had been angry about something small, something stupid, and he had let his strength destroy something that was not his. Yuna had not punished him. Instead, she had sat with him after class and asked him why he was really angry. It had taken a long time for Taiwu to answer. He was angry because he felt stupid. The other cubs learned faster than him. They understood things that he could not understand. He felt like he did not belong in the pack. Yuna had listened to everything. Then she had told him that strength was not just about muscles and claws. Strength was also about patience. Strength was about controlling yourself when you wanted to explode. She said that Taiwu was one of the strongest cubs she had ever met, because fighting against your own anger was harder than fighting any enemy. Now Taiwu took a deep breath and made himself calm. He spoke to the Molix worker gently, asking polite questions instead of making demands. The Molix relaxed and began to talk. Yes, he had seen something strange last night. A human woman running toward the Eastern Maintenance section. She had looked worried. Scared, even. Taiwu thanked the worker and ran to find the others. Hana searched the common areas with 3 other cubs. She was the smallest, so she could fit into spaces the others could not. She crawled under tables and behind machines, looking for any sign of their teacher. As she searched, she remembered the day Yuna had saved her from herself. It had been in the 8th week. Hannah had failed a test badly. She had studied hard, but her mind had gone blank when she saw the questions. When she got her results, she had cried. In Velrith culture, crying was weakness. The other cubs had looked away, embarrassed for her. But Yuna had taken her outside the classroom, away from the others. She had held Hannah's small paws in her human hands and said something that Hannah would never forget. "Failure is not the end," Yuna had said. "Failure is just a step on the path to success. Every time you fall, you learn something new. The only true failure is giving up." Then Yuna had helped her study again. She had stayed late every day for 2 weeks, going over the material until Hannah understood it completely. When Hannah took the test again, she passed with the highest score in the class. Hannah wiped her eyes now, refusing to cry. Yuna would not want her to cry. Yuna would want her to be strong. Yuna would want her to keep searching. Ren reached the faculty quarters and began knocking on doors. Most of the teachers were afraid of him. Velrith cubs had a reputation, and Ren looked more dangerous than most. But he did not care about their fear. He only cared about finding answers. An older teacher, a being made of floating crystals, finally gave him useful information. There had been an alarm last night. A coolant leak in the eastern maintenance section. The area had been sealed for safety reasons. No one was supposed to go in there because the air had become poisonous. But the crystal teacher had heard a rumor. Someone had gone in anyway. Someone small. Someone human. Ren's blood went cold. He understood now. Yuna had gone into a dangerous area, and she had not come out. He sent a message to all the cubs. Meet at the eastern maintenance section. Now. As he ran through the corridors. Ren remembered the moment Yuna had truly become his leader. It had been in the 15th week. On his naming day. In Velrith culture, the naming day was the most important ceremony in a young person's life. It was when a cub received their true name, the name they would carry forever. Family was supposed to be there. Pack was supposed to be there. No outsiders were ever allowed, but Ren's family was far away. They could not travel to the academy for the ceremony. He had thought he would have to do it alone, with only a hologram of his parents watching. Then Yuna had asked if she could attend. It was impossible. It was against every tradition. But Yuna had learned the ancient words of the ceremony. She had practiced the Velrith language until she could speak it perfectly, including the deep growls that humans were not supposed to be able to make. She had asked the Velrith ambassador for special permission, and she had been there, standing with Ren, speaking the words that welcomed him into adulthood, treating him like Pack. From that day forward, Ren had known the truth. Yuna was not just a teacher. She was family. And you did not abandon family. The cubs gathered outside the sealed door to the eastern maintenance section. Warning signs flashed red. Danger symbols covered the walls. A computer voice repeated again and again that the area was restricted, that the air was toxic, that entry was forbidden. The cubs did not care. Ren put his claws against the door. "She is in there," he said. "I can smell her. Faint, but there." "The door needs level 7 clearance," Suji said. "I cannot hack it from here. The security is too strong." Ren looked at his packmates. They looked back at him. No one spoke. No one needed to. Ren began to claw at the door. The metal screamed under his strength. The other cubs joined him, all of them digging and scratching and tearing. They would get through. They would find their teacher. They would bring her home. Or they would die trying. The sound of claws on metal echoed through the corridor like thunder. Sparks flew as 12 Velrith cubs attacked the sealed door with everything they had. Their muscles burned. Their claws ached. Blood began to appear on some of their paws as they scraped against the hard surface. But they did not stop. They could not stop. Ren threw his full weight against the door again and again. Each impact shook his bones. Each impact left a small dent in the metal. It was not enough. The door was too strong, but he would not give up. Somewhere behind that door, his teacher was waiting. Somewhere behind that door, Yuna needed them. Stop right there. The voice was deep and powerful, echoing with authority. Ren turned to see Academy Security Chief Varax marching toward them with 6 armed guards behind him. Varax was a Krellian, a species known for their massive size and their 4 muscular arms. Each of his hands could crush a Vararith cub without effort. His dark armor gleamed under the corridor lights. Cubs, stand down immediately. Varax commanded. You are damaging Academy property and attempting to enter a restricted area. This is a serious violation of student conduct rules. The cubs did not move. They stood in front of the damaged door, their fur raised, their teeth showing. They were scared, but they were also determined. Ren stepped forward to face the security chief. Our teacher is in there, he said. His voice did not shake. She went in last night and she did not come out. We are going to find her. Varax stopped walking. His 4 eyes narrowed as he looked at the young Velrith. Instructor Park? The human? Yes. The area is sealed because of a coolant leak. The air inside is toxic. It is not safe for anyone to enter, especially not for cubs. Hana pushed forward, standing beside Ren. She was so small compared to the massive Krellian, but her voice was steady and clear. She would come for us. If any of us were in danger, she would come. She would not wait for permission. She would not follow rules that kept her from helping us. Varax was silent for a moment. He had heard stories about the human teacher and her impossible class. Everyone in the academy had heard the stories. How she had tamed the most difficult students. How she had turned wild cubs into respectful learners. How she had done what no other teacher could do. He had not believed the stories. Velrith cubs were monsters. Everyone knew that. You could not teach monsters to be gentle. But looking at these cubs now, at the blood on their paws and the fire in their eyes, Varax began to wonder if the stories were true after all. She went in alone, Suji said, showing Varax her tablet with the tracking data. At 0347 hours. Look at the path she took. She went straight to the deepest part of the restricted section. She knew it was dangerous. She went anyway. Why would she do that? One of the guards asked. Why would anyone go into a toxic area without protection? Because she is human, Dohon growled. Humans do not think about themselves first. They think about others. If someone was in trouble in there, she would go to help them. That is who she is. Varax looked at the damaged door. He looked at the cubs. He looked at the data on Suji's tablet. Then he made a decision that would change everything. Stand back, he said. The cubs moved aside. Varax walked to the door and pressed his security code into the panel. The door hissed and began to open. Cold air rushed out, bringing with it a sharp chemical smell that made everyone cough. The corridor beyond was dark and filled with swirling white mist. Warning lights flashed red along the walls. The computer voice immediately began shouting about unsafe conditions and recommending immediate evacuation. I will go in, Varax said. You cubs will stay here and wait. No. Ren's voice was hard as stone. We are going with you. The air is toxic. It could kill you. Then it could kill her too. And she has been in there for hours. Varax stared at the young Velrith. For a long moment, no one moved. Then a security chief reached to his belt and pulled out a handful of small devices. Emergency breathing filters, he said, tossing them to the cubs. Put them over your noses. They will give you 10 minutes of clean air. Do not waste them. The cubs grabbed the filters and attached them quickly. Then, together, they entered the frozen corridor. The cold hit them immediately. It was worse than anything they had ever felt, cutting through their fur like knives made of ice. The mist swirled around them, making it hard to see more than a few steps ahead. Strange sounds echoed from somewhere deeper in the darkness. Pipes groaning and machines crying. Ren pushed forward, following his nose. The chemical smell was strong, but underneath it, he could detect something else. Something familiar. Something human. This way, he said, leading the group deeper into the restricted section. They passed broken machinery and cracked pipes. They climbed over fallen ceiling panels. They pushed through sections where the mist was so thick they could barely see their own paws. The cold grew worse with every step, reaching into their bones, trying to steal their strength. Then Ren saw her. Yuna was lying on the floor near a sealed bulkhead at the end of the corridor. Her body was curled up, her skin pale blue, frost covering her hair and clothes. She was not moving. Her emergency suit, the thin protection that humans wore in dangerous areas, was torn and damaged. No. Hannah screamed, running forward. No, no, no. The cubs surrounded their teacher, their hearts breaking at the sight. But as Ren looked closer, he noticed something important. Yuna's hands were pressed against her chest, protecting something, holding something close to her body. He gently moved her frozen fingers and gasped. Inside, the protection of Yuna's arms was a small, trembling creature. It was a silvery larva, one of the insect-like babies from the delicate species that Dohan had once tried to attack. The larva was shivering with cold, but it was alive. Its large eyes looked up at Ren with confusion and fear. She went in to save this little one, Taiwu said, his voice filled with wonder. A Silvari larva. It must have wandered into the restricted area by accident, and she came to rescue it. Without backup, Suji added, checking her tablet for data. Without telling anyone. Without proper protection. Because there was no time, Jiwoo said quietly. If she had waited, the larva would have died. So she did not wait. Varax pushed forward and knelt beside Yuna. His large hands touched her neck gently, checking for life signs. For a terrible moment, he was silent. Then he let out a breath of relief. She is alive, he said. Barely. Her heart is still beating, but her body temperature is dangerously low. We need to get her to the medical bay immediately. He lifted Yuna carefully in his forearms, cradling her like something precious. The silvery larva clung to her frozen clothes, refusing to let go of the human who had saved its life. Move. Varax commanded. Every second counts. The cubs ran ahead, clearing the path, shouting for people to get out of the way. Varax followed as fast as he could without shaking his fragile cargo. The guards brought up the rear, calling ahead to the medical bay to prepare for emergency treatment. Students filled the corridors now, drawn by the shouting and the chaos. They saw the massive Krellian security chief running with a frozen human in his arms. They saw 12 Velroth cubs racing alongside him, their faces twisted with fear and hope. They saw the tiny Silvari larva clinging to the human's chest. Word spread through the academy like fire. The human teacher had gone into the restricted area alone. She had risked her life to save a Silvari child. Her cubs had found her. Now everyone was running to save her. When they reached the medical bay, the doors burst open and doctors rushed out to meet them. Medical Chief Yumbi Cho, another human, took one look at Yuna and began shouting orders in 3 different languages. Machines were activated. Warming blankets were prepared. Teams of nurses surrounded the frozen body of their colleague. The Silvari larva was gently removed from Yuna's arms and taken to another room. Within minutes, its colony parents arrived, crying and shaking and praising the human who had saved their child. The cubs stood outside the treatment room. watching through the window as doctors fought to save their teacher's life. Their breathing filters were empty now. Their paws were bleeding. Their bodies were exhausted, but they did not leave. They could not leave. Yuna had taught them what it meant to be pack. Now they would show her that they had learned. The medical bay had never seen anything like this. 12 Elrith cubs sat in the waiting area, arranged in a circle facing the treatment room where Yuna Park fought for her life. They had been there for 6 hours. They had refused food. They had refused water. They had refused to leave for any reason at all. When nurses tried to treat the cuts on their paws, the cubs allowed it only if they could stay in their positions. When security officers suggested they return to their rooms, the cubs simply stared at them until the officers walked away. Medical Chief Yumbi Cho came out of the treatment room looking exhausted. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. She was human, like Yuna, and seeing her fellow human in such terrible condition had affected her deeply. But she was also a professional, and she had work to do. The cubs need to leave, she said to Varax, who had stayed to keep order. This is a medical facility. They cannot just camp here. Varax crossed his forearms. I told them to leave. They did not listen. Then make them listen. You are the security chief. Varax looked at the cubs. Ren met his eyes without flinching. The young Velrath's gaze was calm and certain, like a warrior who had made peace with death. She is Pack, Ren said simply. We do not leave Pack. Yumbi opened her mouth to argue, but something stopped her. She had been at the academy for 15 years. She had seen many species, many cultures, many ways of showing love. But she had never seen Velrath cubs behave like this. Velrath were supposed to be cold. They were supposed to care only about their own kind. They were supposed to view other species as either threats or prey. These cubs were different. These cubs had been changed by something. By someone. How is she? Hannah asked. Her small voice cracked with worry. Yun sighed and sat down on a bench near the cubs. If she could not make them leave, she might as well talk to them. Her condition is critical, she said honestly. The cold damaged her lungs. The toxic air burned her throat and chest. She has frostbite on her fingers and toes. We are doing everything we can, but the next 24 hours will be very dangerous. She will survive, Doan said. It was not a question or a hope. It was a statement of fact. I cannot promise that. I am not asking you to promise. I am telling you what will happen. She will survive. She is the strongest person I know. Yumbi looked at the scarred cub with surprise. You really believe that? She stood between me and my prey once. She took my claws across her arm without making a sound. She did not run. She did not cry. She just looked at me and asked if I felt better. Daohan's voice became quiet. No one had ever done that before. No one had ever thought I was worth saving from myself. The other cubs nodded. Each of them had their own story. Each of them had a moment when Yuna had done something unexpected, something kind, something that changed the way they saw the world. Hours passed. The academy continued its daily routine around them, but the medical bay had become a strange island of stillness. The cubs did not play or fight or complain. They simply waited, their eyes always returning to the treatment room window. Other visitors began to arrive. First came the Silvari colony, 20 insect-like beings moving in perfect formation. They carried bioluminescent flowers that glowed with soft blue light, a traditional Silvari gift of gratitude. The colony leader approached the cubs and bowed deeply. The humans saved our child, the leader said, its voice like the sound of wind through leaves. The larva had wandered into the restricted area, looking for warm places to rest. It would have died within the hour if not for your teacher. We owe her a debt that can never be repaid. The Silvari placed their flowers outside the treatment room door and took positions along the wall. Joining the vigil. Next came a group of Taraki, massive beings made of living stone. They moved slowly, their heavy footsteps shaking the floor. The Taraki rarely showed emotion. They rarely cared about the problems of flesh and blood creatures. The three of them came to the medical bay and stood like statues near the entrance, their glowing eyes fixed on the treatment room. "Why are you here?" Minho asked them. "The human helped us once," one Taraki answered. Its voice rumbled like an earthquake. A group of students was mocking our slow movement. They called us stupid. They said we did not belong among faster species. The humans stopped them. She told them that Taraki built civilizations while other species were still learning to use fire. She told them that strength is not about speed, but about endurance. The Taraki was silent for a moment. No one had ever defended us before. We remember. More visitors came as the hours continued. A delegation of Tessari, the prey species whose students had once cornered Dion. A group of Moloch's maintenance workers who said Yuna always said hello to them in the hallways. Even two Vexari, the cold and logical species that considered emotions to be weaknesses, came to stand near the door. "This is illogical," one of the Vexari said to the other. "Standing here will not improve her medical outcome." "I know," the second Vexari replied. "I do not know why I came. I simply felt that I should be here." The first Vexari nodded slowly. "Yes, I felt it too." The human creates strange feelings in those around her. By the second day, the corridor outside the medical bay was filled with beings from dozens of different species. They brought food that the cubs finally agreed to eat. They brought blankets and cushions so the cubs could rest without leaving. They brought stories about Yuna, small moments of kindness that had touched their lives. Jiwoo, the quietest cub, finally spoke. He had been silent since they found Yuna in the frozen corridor. Now he looked at the gathered crowd with wonder in his eyes. "She told us once about something humans call hope," he said. "She said it was believing that things would be okay, even when all the evidence said they would not. She said it was not logical. She said it was choosing to trust in something you could not prove." The cubs and the visitors listened carefully. "I did not understand then," Jiwoo continued. "Velroth do not hope. We plan, we prepare, we fight, but we do not believe in things we cannot see." He looked at the treatment room where doctors still worked to save Yuna's life. "Now I think I understand. Hope is not about ignoring reality. Hope is about refusing to let reality decide your actions. Hope is saying that the fight is worth fighting, even if you might lose." Hannah wiped her eyes. "She taught us that too." She never said those words, but she showed us every day. She kept teaching us even when we were terrible to her. She kept believing in us even when we gave her no reason to believe. Ren stood up slowly. His body ached from sitting so long, but he ignored the pain. He looked at all the beings who had gathered to support a single human teacher. "She changed us," he said. "Not just our class. All of us. Every species here has been touched by her kindness in some way." She walked into rooms full of strangers and walked out with friends. She saw enemies and made them allies. She saw monsters and made them family. His voice grew stronger. "That is what humans do. That is their gift. They are small and weak and fragile, but they have something that no other species has. They have the ability to love without conditions. They love not because it benefits them, but simply because they choose to love." The medical bay was silent. Everyone was watching the young Velroth cub, who had learned something precious from a human teacher. "She will wake up," Ren said. "And when she does, she will see that she is not alone. She will see that her pack is bigger than she ever imagined. She will see that the love she gave has come back to her 1,000 times over." He sat back down with his packmates. The vigil continued. On the evening of the third day, Medical Chief Yumbi came out of the treatment room. Her face was different now. The exhaustion was still there, but something else had joined it. Something that looked very much like relief. "She is awake," Yumbi said. "She is asking for her cubs." The 12 Velrith did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They simply stood up together and walked toward the door, ready to see their teacher again, ready to show her that they had learned the most important lesson of all. The treatment room was warm and bright. Medical machines hummed softly, displaying numbers and charts that showed a patient recovering. Flowers from a dozen different worlds covered every surface, filling the air with strange and beautiful scents. Una Park lay in the bed, looking small and pale against the white sheets. Bandages covered her hands where the frostbite had damaged her fingers. Her voice was rough and broken from the toxic air she had breathed. But her eyes were open, and they were filled with tears as she watched her cubs enter the room. Ren led the way, as he always did. Behind him came the others, all 12 of them, their ears low and their tails still. They moved slowly, carefully, as if afraid that moving too fast might break something precious. "You found me," Una whispered. Her voice was barely a sound. "You were late," Dohn said. His gruff tone could not hide the emotion underneath. It was annoying. Una laughed, and the laugh turned into coughing. The cubs rushed forward in concern, surrounding her bed, reaching out with their paws to touch her arms and shoulders. They needed to feel that she was real. They needed to know that she was truly alive. "I was so worried," Una said when the coughing stopped. "When I saw the larva in that corridor, I did not think. I just ran. I should have called for help. I should have been smarter." "You were brave," Hana said, climbing onto the edge of the bed. "You were so brave. You saved that little one. I almost died doing it. But you did not die." Ren's voice was firm. "You did not die because we found you. Because we would not stop looking until we did." Una looked at him with wonder. "How did you know something was wrong?" "I did not tell anyone where I was going." "We knew because you were not there," Jiwoo said quietly. "You promised us that you would never leave without telling us. When you were not in the classroom, we knew something had happened. We knew you needed us. The whole academy knows now," Suji added. "Everyone is talking about it. The human teacher who went into a toxic area to save a Selvari larva. The Velrith cubs who tore through a sealed door to find her. It is the biggest story in the station." Una closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, more tears were falling down her cheeks. "I never wanted to be famous. I just wanted to teach." "You did teach us," Taiwu said. "You taught us more than language and manners and how to live with other species. You taught us what it means to be family." A knock came at the door. Medical Chief Yumbi entered, followed by 2 impressive figures. One was Academy Director Thexfer, an ancient being made entirely of golden energy. His form shifted and flowed like a living flame. Beside him walked the Velreth ambassador, a huge gray wolf with silver markings that matched Ren's own. "Instructor Park," the director said. His voice echoed with power. "I am relieved to see you recovering. Your actions have caused quite a situation." Una tried to sit up, but the cubs gently pushed her back down. "Director, I am sorry for violating the safety protocols. I know I should have called for help. I know I should have followed the rules. Yes, you should have. The board of directors has been debating how to respond to your actions. You broke 17 different safety regulations. Technically, this calls for serious disciplinary action. Perhaps even termination of your position." The cubs growled softly. Ren stepped forward, his eyes blazing. "If you punish her, you punish us too. She is our teacher. She is our pack. We will not let you." The Velroth ambassador raised one massive paw, and Ren fell silent instantly. The ambassador was the highest authority for all Velroth people. Even young cubs knew to respect his command. "I have been watching your teacher for 6 months," the ambassador said. His voice was deep and rumbling, like thunder rolling across mountains. "I have read reports about her class. I have seen video recordings of her lessons. I expected her to teach my people's cubs the basics of language and behavior. I expected her to help them survive in a galaxy that fears us." He paused, looking at the 12 cubs surrounding Yuna's bed. Instead, she taught them something that no Velroth has understood in 10,000 years of traveling among the stars. She taught them that pack is not about blood. Pack is not about species or homeworld or the shape of your body. Pack is about choice. Pack is about love. The ambassador turned to Director Nexfor. "The Velroth Dominion formally requests that Instructor Yuna Park be granted permanent diplomatic immunity. Any action taken against her will be considered an action against the Velroth people. This is not a request. This is a statement of fact." The director's energy form flickered with surprise. "Ambassador, that is a very serious declaration. You understand what you are saying?" "I do. This human has done more for relations between the Velroth and other species than 100 years of diplomacy. She has created bonds that seemed impossible. She has proven that understanding can exist between predator and prey, between hunter and hunted. My government believes she is too valuable to lose." Yuna was staring at the ambassador with wide eyes. "I do not deserve this. I just did my job. I just tried to help my students." The ambassador looked at her directly. "That is exactly why you deserve it. You did not try to change us. You did not try to make Velroth cubs into something they are not. You simply showed them that being Velroth and being kind are not opposites. You showed them that strength and gentleness can live in the same heart." Director Nexfor was silent for a long moment. His golden energy swirled and shifted as he considered the situation. Finally, he spoke. "The board's decision will be postponed indefinitely. Instructor Park, you are not to be disciplined. Instead, you are to be given a commendation for bravery and a promotion to senior faculty status." He turned to face the cubs. "And you 12 will receive commendations as well for your loyalty and determination. Though perhaps we should also discuss the damage you did to that door. We will pay for the repairs," Ren said. "All of us, together." The director nodded slowly. "That is acceptable. I believe our business here is concluded. Instructor Park, please rest and recover. The academy needs you." He left the room, his golden form floating through the door. The ambassador remained a moment longer. "When you are well," he said to Yuna, "I would like you to visit our homeworld. I want my people to meet the human who taught our cubs how to love." Then he too was gone, and the room was quiet again. Yuna looked at her cubs. They looked back at her. No one spoke. No one needed to. Everything important had already been said. Hannah crawled fully onto the bed and curled up beside Yuna's legs. One by one, the other cubs found places around her, some on the bed, some on chairs pulled close, some sitting on the floor with their heads resting against the mattress. "We are not leaving," Ren said. "Not until you are completely better." "I would not want you to leave," Yuna replied. Her voice was still rough, but it was filled with warmth. "You are my pack too. Did you know that?" "Yes," Dawn said. "We knew. We always knew." They stayed there together as the hours passed. Teacher and students, human and Velroth, family in all the ways that mattered. 3 months later, Yuna stood in front of a new classroom. Room 47C had been expanded and remodeled. It was bigger now, designed to hold more students of different sizes and species. Her original 12 cubs had graduated to advanced courses, but they still visited every day. They still called her by a special Velroth word that meant something like chosen mother. They still considered themselves her pack, and she still considered them her family. The new class sitting before her was different from any class the Academy had ever seen. There were Velroth cubs, yes, but also Silvari younglings, Taraki children, Tessari students, and half a dozen other species mixed together. It was the first integrated class in Academy history. Predator and prey learning side by side. A young Taraki raised one of its stone arms. Instructor Park? The course description says you teach interspecies communication. But everyone says you teach something else. They say you teach us how to be human. Yuna smiled. The scars on her hands were still visible. Her voice was still slightly rough from the damage to her throat. These marks would stay with her forever. Reminders of the night she almost died saving a child who was not her own. But they were also reminders of what she had gained. 12 cubs who would do anything for her. A reputation that spanned the galaxy. A family that grew larger every day. Human is not about species, she said. Human is about choice. It is about deciding that the walls between us matter less than what we share. It is about looking at someone different and seeing not a stranger, but a friend you have not met yet. She looked at the mixed group of students, all of them watching her with curious eyes. Some were afraid of each other. Some had been taught to hate each other. But they were here, in this room, willing to try something new. I cannot teach you how to be human, Yuna continued. But I can teach you how to hope. I can teach you how to trust. I can teach you how to love. She picked up a piece of chalk and wrote something on the board. Just one word. A word that meant the same thing in every language across the galaxy. Family. Now, Yuna said, turning back to face her students. Let us begin. Outside the window of room 47C, 12 Velroth cubs watched their teachers start a new lesson. They had come to observe, to support, to remember. They would always come. They would always watch. They would always be her pack, because that was what Yuna Park had taught them.